Hey there and welcome. I'm so glad you're here with me today. I've been thinking a lot lately about something that seems so simple on the surface, but is actually one of the most complicated things we do as human beings. And that's communication. I mean, we communicate all day, every day, right? We text, we talk, we email, we post things online, we have conversations with our partners, our kids, our coworkers, our friends. But here's the thing. Just because we're doing it all the time doesn't mean we're doing it well. And I think a lot of us, if we're being really honest, struggle with how to even start a conversation sometimes. Like, how do you begin? What do you say? How do you make sure you're being understood? And that's what I want to talk about today. How to start communication. Because I really believe that the way we begin sets the tone for everything that follows. So let's just dive right in. When I say communication, what I'm really talking about is connection. That's what it's all about, right? We're trying to connect with another person. We're trying to share something, whether it's information or a feeling or an idea or just our presence. And the beautiful thing about communication is that it's this incredibly human thing. It's how we build relationships, how we solve problems, how we express love, how we work through conflict. But it can also be really vulnerable. And I think that's why so many of us hesitate. We don't know how to start because we're not sure how it's going to go. We're worried about being misunderstood or rejected or ignored, and those are totally valid fears. But here's what I want you to know. Communication is a skill, and like any skill, you can learn it, you can practice it, and you can get better at it. Nobody is born knowing exactly how to have a difficult conversation or how to express their needs clearly or how to really listen to someone else. These are things we learn over time. And the first step, the absolute foundation of it all, is just starting. Just opening your mouth and saying something, or sitting down and writing that message, or picking up the phone. The beginning is everything. So let's talk about what it actually means to start communication. I think there are a few different ways to look at this. First, there's the literal beginning of a conversation. Like, you're standing next to someone at a party, or you're sitting down with your partner after work, or you're about to have a meeting with your boss. How do you actually start talking? What words do you use? And then there's the bigger picture version, which is how do you start communicating better in general? How do you shift from being someone who avoids tough conversations to someone who leans into them? How do you go from feeling misunderstood all the time to feeling heard? Both of these things matter, and I want to touch on both. Let's start with the practical stuff, the nuts and bolts of beginning a conversation. One of the simplest and most important things you can do is just be present. I know that sounds almost too basic, but think about it. How many times have you tried to talk to someone and they're on their phone, or they're distracted, or they're clearly thinking about something else? It doesn't feel good, right? So if you're the one starting the conversation, show up. Put your phone down. Make eye contact. Turn your body toward the other person. Let them know, without even saying a word, that they have your attention. This is huge, because people can sense when you're really there with them versus when you're just going through the motions. And then, once you're present, think about your opening. This is going to depend on the situation, obviously. If you're just making small talk, you might start with something light and easy. A comment about the weather, or a compliment, or a question about their day. The goal here is just to create a little moment of connection, to break the ice. And honestly, small talk gets a bad rap sometimes, but I think it serves a purpose. It's like a warm-up. It helps both people relax and ease into the conversation. So don't underestimate the power of a simple, friendly opening. But what if you need to have a more serious conversation? Maybe you need to talk to your partner about something that's been bothering you, or you need to give feedback to someone at work, or you need to have a heart-to-heart with a friend. These kinds of conversations require a different approach. And this is where a lot of us get stuck. We don't know how to start because we're worried about how the other person is going to react. We're afraid of making things awkward, or starting a fight, or hurting someone's feelings. So we just don't. We avoid it. We let things build up until they explode, or we let the relationship suffer because we're not addressing what needs to be addressed. Here's what I've learned. the best way to start a difficult conversation is with honesty and kindness. You want to be direct about what you need to talk about, but you also want to come from a place of care. One technique that I love is to start with an invitation. Instead of jumping right into the issue, you say something like, "Hey, I've been thinking about something and I'd really like to talk to you about it. Is now a good time?" This does a few things. First, it gives the other person a heads up that something important is coming. Second, it shows respect for their time and their emotional state. And third, it frames the conversation as something you want to do together, not something you're doing to them. Another thing that can help is to name your intention. You might say, "I want to talk about this because I care about our relationship and I want us to be on the same page." Or, "I'm bringing this up because I think it'll help us work together better." When you start by explaining why you want to have the conversation, it helps the other person understand that you're not attacking them. You're trying to improve things. You're coming from a good place. And that can really lower their defenses and make them more open to hearing you. Now let's talk about tone. This is so important, you guys. The words you use matter, absolutely, but the way you say them matters just as much, maybe even more. You can say the exact same sentence in two different ways and communicate two completely different things. Think about the difference between saying, "We need to talk," in a cold, stern voice versus saying it in a warm, gentle voice. Same words, totally different energy. So pay attention to your tone. Are you coming across as angry or judgmental or defensive? Or are you coming across as calm and curious and open? Your tone sets the emotional temperature of the conversation, and you have more control over that than you might think. One thing that really helps with tone is to take a breath before you start talking. Literally, just pause and take a deep breath. This does a couple of things. It calms your nervous system, which means you're less likely to come across as anxious or aggressive, and it gives you a second to center yourself and remember what you're really trying to accomplish. You're not trying to win. You're not trying to prove a point. You're trying to connect. You're trying to understand and be understood. That breath can be the difference between a conversation that goes well and one that goes off the rails. Okay, so we've talked about being present, choosing your opening, setting your intention, and managing your tone. Now let's talk about something that I think is absolutely crucial, and that's vulnerability. If you want to start communication in a way that really opens things up, you have to be willing to be a little bit vulnerable. And I know that's scary. Vulnerability means showing people parts of yourself that you might usually keep hidden. It means admitting when you're hurt or confused or afraid. It means saying things like, "I'm not sure how to say this," or "I'm feeling really nervous about bringing this up." And when you do that, when you let someone see that you're a real person with real feelings, it invites them to do the same. There's this researcher named Brené Brown, and she talks a lot about vulnerability. She says that vulnerability is not weakness. It's actually the most accurate measure of courage. And I love that, because it takes courage to start a conversation when you don't know how it's going to go. It takes courage to say, "I need something from you," or "I disagree with you," or "I've made a mistake." But when you show up with that kind of courage, when you're willing to be vulnerable, you create space for real, authentic communication. You're not hiding behind a wall. You're not playing games. You're just being human, and that's powerful. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're upset with your partner because they've been working late every night and you're feeling neglected. You could start that conversation in a blaming way. You could say, "You're always working, you never make time for me, you don't care about us anymore." And yeah, that's direct, but it's also putting them on the defensive. They're probably going to get defensive, and then you're in a fight. Or you could start with vulnerability. You could say, "I've been feeling really lonely lately. I miss spending time with you. I know work is busy, but I need more connection with you. Can we talk about how to make that happen?" See the difference? You're being honest about your feelings, you're not attacking them, and you're inviting them into a conversation about solutions. That's starting communication in a way that actually has a chance of going somewhere good. Now I want to talk about listening, because here's the thing. Communication isn't just about what you say, It's also about how you listen. And a lot of us, myself included, are not great listeners. We think we're listening, but really we're just waiting for our turn to talk. We're formulating our response while the other person is still speaking. We're thinking about how we're going to defend ourselves or what point we want to make next. And that's not really listening. Real listening is about being fully present with what the other person is saying and trying to understand them, not just respond to them. So when you start a conversation, especially a difficult one, make a commitment to really listen. And here's how you do that. First, stop talking. I know that sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how hard it is to actually be quiet and give someone space to speak. Second, pay attention. Listen to their words, but also listen to their tone, their body language, what they're not saying. Third, don't interrupt. Let them finish their thought, even if you're dying to jump in. And fourth, check your understanding. After they've said something, you might say, "Okay, so what I'm hearing is," and then you reflect back what you think they said. This shows them that you're really paying attention, and it also gives them a chance to clarify if you didn't quite get it right. Listening is a huge part of starting communication well, because it shows the other person that you're not just interested in talking at them. You actually care about what they have to say. And when people feel heard, they're so much more likely to hear you in return. It creates this positive cycle where both people feel valued and respected, and that's when real communication can happen. Let's talk about timing for a minute. When you start a conversation can be just as important as how you start it. If you try to have a serious talk with someone when they're stressed out, or exhausted, or distracted, it's probably not going to go well. So think about when you're bringing something up. Is this a good time? Is the other person in a place where they can really engage with you? If not, it's okay to wait. You can say, "I want to talk to you about something important. Can we set aside some time this weekend when we're both free?" That way, you're both walking into the conversation with the right mindset, and you're more likely to actually connect. There's also something to be said for not waiting too long. I think sometimes we put off conversations because we're hoping the problem will just go away on its own, or we're trying to find the perfect moment, or we're just scared. And I get that. But the longer you wait, the harder it gets. Things build up, resentment grows, and by the time you finally say something, you're so worked up that it all comes out wrong. So try to find a balance. Don't have the conversation when emotions are running super high, but also don't wait so long that the issue becomes this huge, insurmountable thing. Trust your gut. If something needs to be addressed, address it sooner rather than later. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about starting communication in a more general sense. Like, how do you become someone who communicates well, not just in one conversation, but in your life overall? Because I think there's a mindset shift that has to happen. You have to decide that communication matters to you. You have to decide that you're willing to put in the effort to get better at it. And you have to be patient with yourself, because this stuff takes practice. One of the first things you can do is get curious about your own communication style. How do you usually show up in conversations? Do you tend to shut down, or do you get aggressive? Do you avoid conflict at all costs, or do you seek it out? Are you comfortable expressing your needs, or do you expect people to just know what you want? There's no right or wrong answer here. The goal is just to become aware. Because once you know your patterns, you can start to change them. For me, I realized that I had a tendency to be really indirect. I would hint at what I wanted instead of just saying it. I'd make jokes or use sarcasm when I was actually upset. And then I'd be frustrated when people didn't understand me. But of course, they didn't understand me. I wasn't being clear. So I had to work on being more direct, more honest, more willing to just say what I meant. And it was hard at first. It felt uncomfortable. But the more I did it, the easier it got. And the quality of my relationships improved so much because people actually knew where I stood. Another thing that can help is to educate yourself. There are so many great resources out there about communication. Books, podcasts, videos, courses. You can learn about active listening, nonviolent communication, conflict resolution, emotional intelligence. All of these things can give you tools and frameworks for communicating better. And the more you learn, the more confident you'll feel. You'll start to see conversations not as these scary, unpredictable things, but as opportunities to connect and grow. And then, of course, there's practice. You get better at communication by communicating. Start small. Maybe you practice asking for what you need in low-stakes situations. Like, instead of just going along with whatever your friend suggests for dinner, you say, "Actually, I'm really craving Thai food tonight. Would that work for you?" Or you practice giving genuine compliments. Or you work on making more eye contact. These little things add up. They help you get more comfortable with expressing yourself and engaging with other people. And over time, you'll find that bigger, more difficult conversations feel less intimidating. I also want to talk about self-compassion, because here's the thing, you're not going to get it right every time. You're going to have conversations that don't go well. You're going to say the wrong thing or misunderstand someone or get defensive when you didn't mean to. And that's okay. That's part of being human. The important thing is that you don't beat yourself up about it. You acknowledge what happened, you learn from it, and you try again. Communication is not about perfection. It's about showing up over and over with the intention to do your best. Let's talk about some common obstacles that get in the way of starting communication. One big one is fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being vulnerable. And like I said, these fears are totally understandable. But they can also keep you stuck. They can keep you from having the conversations you need to have, from building the relationships you want to build, from getting your needs met. So what do you do with fear? Well, first, you acknowledge it. You don't try to pretend it's not there. You say, "Okay, I'm scared." That makes sense. And then you do the thing anyway. You feel the fear and you start the conversation. Because usually, the anticipation is worse than the actual event. And even if the conversation is hard, you'll feel so much better having done it than you would if you'd continued to avoid it. Another obstacle is assumptions. We make so many assumptions in communication. We assume we know what the other person is thinking or feeling or going to say. We assume they should know what we need without us having to spell it out. We assume that if they really cared, they would do things differently. And all of these assumptions get in the way of real connection. So instead of assuming, ask. Check in. Say, "I'm not sure what you're thinking about this, can you tell me?" Or "I've been assuming that you know how important this is to me, but I realize I might not have actually said that. Have I?" Asking questions and seeking clarification is such a simple thing, but it can prevent so many misunderstandings. There's also the obstacle of past experiences. Maybe you've tried to communicate in the past and it didn't go well. Maybe someone shut you down or dismissed your feelings or got angry. And so now you're carrying that with you, and it makes you hesitant to try again. And I really feel for you if that's your situation. That's painful. But here's what I want to remind you. Every conversation is different. Every person is different. Just because someone reacted badly in the past doesn't mean that's what's going to happen this time. You deserve to be heard. Your feelings are valid. And there are people out there who will listen to you with respect and care. Don't let old wounds keep you from reaching out. Let's also talk about technology for a second, because so much of our communication these days happens through text or email or social media. And that brings its own challenges. When you're not face to face with someone, when you can't hear their tone or see their expressions, it's really easy for things to get misconstrued. You send a message that you think is totally clear, and the other person reads it in a completely different way. Or you're trying to have a serious conversation over text, and it just keeps going in circles because you're both misunderstanding each other. My advice, for anything important, try to have the conversation in person if at all possible, or at least over the phone or a video call. Tone and body language communicate so much, and you lose all of that in a text message. That said, I know that's not always realistic. Sometimes text is your only option, so if you do have to have an important conversation digitally, be extra careful with your words. Read your message before you send it and think about how it might come across. Use punctuation and emojis to help convey tone. And if something feels like it's getting misunderstood, don't be afraid to say, "You know what? I think we should talk about this on the phone. I want to make sure we're really understanding each other. One more thing I want to touch on is the importance of follow-through. Starting communication is great, but it doesn't end there. Communication is ongoing. It's not a one-time thing, so after you have a conversation, check in. How are things going? Did we resolve what we needed to resolve? Do we need to talk more? This shows that you're committed, that you're not just checking a box. You're actually invested in the relationship and in understanding the other person. And that kind of consistency builds trust over time. I also think it's important to celebrate your wins. When you have a conversation that goes well, when you express something that was hard to say and the other person really hears you, acknowledge that. Give yourself credit. Say, "That was brave, I'm proud of myself for doing that," or thank the other person. Say, "Thank you for being open with me, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk." These little moments of recognition reinforce the positive aspects of communication and make you more likely to keep doing it. You know, one of the things I've come to believe is that good communication is an act of love. Whether it's with a romantic partner, a friend, a family member, a coworker, whoever. When you take the time to really express yourself, to really listen, to really try to understand and be understood, you're saying, "You matter to me. This relationship matters to me. I care enough to put in the effort." And in a world where so many of us feel disconnected and misunderstood, that's huge. That's everything, really. So how do you start communication? You start by showing up. You start by being honest and kind. You start by being willing to be vulnerable. You start by really listening. You start by choosing the right time and the right words. You start by managing your tone and your body language. You start by asking questions and checking your assumptions. You start by being patient with yourself and with the other person. You start by recognizing that communication is a skill that you can always improve. And you start by remembering why it matters. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same things. We want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want to be understood, we want to connect. And communication is how we make that happen. I want to leave you with a challenge. Think about one conversation that you've been avoiding. Maybe it's something small, maybe it's something big. Whatever it is, I want you to commit to starting that conversation this week. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to know exactly what you're going to say or how it's going to go. You just have to take that first step. Reach out. Say, "Can we talk?" And then show up. With an open heart and a willingness to connect. That's all it takes. Just start. Because I promise you, on the other side of that conversation, whether it goes perfectly or not, you're going to feel better. You're going to feel proud of yourself for having the courage to try. And you're going to be one step closer to the kinds of relationships and connections that you really want in your life. Communication is a gift. It's how we share our humanity with each other. And every time you start a conversation, every time you open your mouth and say something true, every time you lean in and really listen, you're participating in something beautiful. You're building bridges. You're creating understanding. You're making the world a little bit smaller and a little bit kinder. And that matters so much more than you might think. So thank you for being here with me today. Thank you for caring about this. Thank you for being willing to think about how you communicate and how you can do it better. I hope this conversation has been helpful. I hope it's given you some things to think about and maybe some tools to try. And I hope that you'll take what resonates with you and put it into practice in your own life. Because you deserve to be heard. Your voice matters. Your feelings matter. Your needs matter. And the more you show up and communicate that, the more fulfilling your relationships are going to be. All right, my friend, that's what I have for you today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I hope you find the courage to start those conversations that have been sitting on your heart. I believe in you. I really do. Take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you soon.